First Things First is sponsored by Ram Trucks, built to serve.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to First Things First. I am Jenna Wolf alongside Nick Wright, Kevin Wilds. Brian Westbrook is with us and ensured us he is indeed wearing pants. I don't know why that was up for a debate. We got a big show for you on this Tuesday morning. Coming up, Belichick with a very interesting comment on life after Brady. Kyle Rudolph and Ben Watson are going to stop by. And is Joe Burrow the next LeBron James? That is where we start this morning. Let us dive in. So, the debate has quickly turned from if the Cincinnati Bengals should draft Joe Burrow #1 overall next Thursday to if Burrow should even want to play for a Cincinnati team coming off their worst season in franchise history. One Bengals legend thinks he could have a major impact on the city of Cincinnati. Boomer Esiason said, quote, "I equate him to when LeBron James came out of high school his senior year and the Cavs had that top pick. They were the Cleveland Cavaliers, for God's sake. He grew up in the shadow of Cleveland and brought them the championship. Now it's Joe Burrow's time. This is his time. He's got to go home and get it straight, and he's the reason they get it straight. That's the way it should be written, and that's the way he should be looking at it." So, Nick, what do you make of what Boomer had to say about Joe Burrow?
I like Boomer a lot, but I think this is a borderline ludicrous comparison and unfair to Joe Burrow. The NFL is not the NBA. In the NBA, if you get the #1 pick of the draft, that is the single best thing you can win other than a championship. If you look at over the last 20 years, the median #1 overall pick is Blake Griffin, a future Hall of Famer, multi-time All-Star. You have Yao Ming, Zion, Anthony Davis, not even to mention LeBron, Kyrie Irving, John Wall, and I'm leaving a bunch out. If you get the #1 pick in the NBA, you're more often than not set. In the NFL, it is so much more of a mixed bag. We talked about this a few weeks ago. We can show it again here. Post Peyton Manning, the median #1 overall pick for the NFL is probably Alex Smith, maybe Sam Bradford. If, in fact, in the last quarter century, if you don't draft a Manning brother #1 overall, you're not getting a Super Bowl champion quarterback. So I think it's unfair to Burrow. I think it's ahistorical. And I think that it also disregards the fact that the NFL, unlike the NBA, is so based on where you get drafted. Wherever LeBron went, they were going to be successful because that's how the NBA works with a player of that caliber. The NFL Wilds is not like that at all, and I don't know that there is a franchise in the league less set up for short or long-term success than the Cincinnati Bengals. So it's nothing against Joe, but Wilds, I totally disagree with what Boomer Esiason had to say there.
Nick, I actually liked Boomer's idea, and he was talking about the narrative of it and how great it would be for the city and the state. And I actually don't think it's when LeBron got drafted. I'll twist it a little bit. What about if we looked at the analogy of when LeBron came back to Cleveland? He comes back, and a month later, Dan Gilbert says, okay, let's get Kevin Love. So now we've got LeBron, Kyrie, and Kevin Love. We've got to surround our superstar with other stars. I think the Bengals are also headed down that path. Traditionally, they haven't spent, if we can put up the graphic, this year, they're going all out. Bengals free agent spending. Read this from the bottom up. 2011, 28th, 17th, 15th, last. 16th, 28th, last again. 31st, 17th. This year, $131.9 million, third in the league. You got to respect it that the Bengals are saying, you know what? To heck with the past. Let's surround our guy with star players. Other little thing, Nick. LeBron didn't make the playoffs first 2 years. I don't think there's going to be immediate success for Joe Burrow, but when you see how much money they're spending, you got to think success is coming down the road a little bit for the Bengals.
You know, guys, Brian, let me bring you in here. I was just going to say, Nick makes a really good point. Joe Burrow isn't LeBron James. The NFL isn't the NBA. One guy in the NFL doesn't have the same impact as one guy in the NBA, especially the greatest, arguably, to ever play the sport. What do you make of what Boomer had to say?
You know, I kind of agree with Nick. It's always tough to compare football and basketball because in the game of basketball, that one player can just be the total difference maker. And we saw LeBron in Cleveland as we bring him up. The Cleveland Cavs went from 17 wins before LeBron got there and more than doubled their win total the next year when LeBron came there and became the Rookie of the Year. They won 35 games. And so they were able to win a bunch more games because of LeBron and his talent. And in football, it's a little bit different. You have to have the offensive line. You have to have the wide receivers. You have to have the tight end. You have to have the defense that can bring character to your football team. And all of those positions that I just named, you have to have questions for the Cincinnati Bengals. And can they get it done? The other thing is that I love the fact that Joe Burrow is going to go home. And I think in that situation, there's that comparison to LeBron just a bit. And I had an opportunity, and listen, I went to Villanova, which is kind of in the footsteps right outside of Philadelphia, and there was not as much pressure on me to win. I was a third-round pick. I was a running back. However, there was some pressure on me to try to help that football team to get over the hump. And then we won a bunch of games. We didn't finally ended up winning that Super Bowl, but there was a bunch of pressure on me to be able to help the football team. I can't imagine the type of pressure that Joe Burrow, the #1 pick overall, and going back to his hometown in Cincinnati, is going to have to try to win football games. There's going to be a lot of pressure. He doesn't have a lot of talent around him, but that spending that you're talking about they've been doing, Kevin, is certainly going to help him. They have a lot of things to fix in that organization. I think Joe Burrow certainly can help them in a lot of different ways, but there's a lot of things to fix.
But, Nick, let me ask you this. Are the Bengals even poised for a quick turnaround, given their schedule, given that division? There are other factors than just what impact could Joe Burrow have?
Yeah, I think that Wildes had it right yesterday when he discussed, you looked at the schedule, I thought it was a really good point. They're in arguably the most competitive division in the league. They didn't get lucky with the divisions they play out of division, drawing the NFC East, which while doesn't have any great teams other than Washington, you don't anticipate will have any terrible teams. And I understand the point about spending money, but all money spent is not good money spent. When you spend $131 million in future contracts and more than $100 million of that goes to Trey Waynes, a disappointing former first-round pick from Minnesota, DJ Reader, an overachieving fifth-round pick, and Von Bell, I'd wonder, are you really spending money wisely? And the issue for the Bengals, Wildes, is they have drafted terribly. When they had that successful 5 years with Dalton and Marvin Lewis, while they weren't winning playoff games, they were consistently getting the playoffs. That was built off 2 draft classes. You got Carlos Dunlap, Geno Atkins, A.J. Green, and Andy Dalton in the 2010 and 2011 drafts. The last 3 years, they drafted Jonah Williams in the first round. He didn't play last year. They drafted Drew Sample right after him. He had 5 catches. The year before, they drafted Billy Price in the first round. He started 8 games last year. The year before that, they drafted John Ross in the top 10. He has 700 receiving yards total in 3 years. Kevin, this is why if I'm Cincinnati, I strongly consider trading this pick for a package of picks from Miami because I have shown such an inability to draft the right guy. I need multiple bites at the apple if I'm Cincinnati, especially because Kevin, I don't think they can compete right now with or without Joe Burrow.
But I guess, Nick, I'll throw the question right back to you. Does Miami want to trade all those picks? Miami's at 3. They're like, we're good. We also want multiple bites at the apple. If everybody wants multiple bites at the apple, I just assume Miami does too.
Well, I'll kick it to Westbrook in the similar vein. I think it would be crazy, Brian, for Miami to trade the 5th pick plus the pick they got for Minkah Fitzpatrick plus one of the picks they got for Tunsil plus something else to move up to number 1. I think that would be crazy and the wrong way to build a team. But Miami, I think ownership feels like we have to get the quarterback. We've been mostly irrelevant since Dan Marino stopped being our quarterback. So I wouldn't do that if I were Miami. But if you were Cincinnati, Brian, and Miami offered you all 3 of their first-round picks this year, would that be enough for you to move off of Burrow at 1?
You know, if I was Cincinnati and I was offered 3 first-round picks for Joe Burrow and I had an opportunity to draft someone like Tua instead of Burrow, I absolutely would consider that. That's something that I would do because you need – this football team gave up over 34 points 4 times last year. They gave up more rushing yards per game than anyone in the NFL. They have a bunch of holes to fill on the offensive side at right tackle, and on the defensive side, they're trying to find a way to stop the run. And so when you talk about adding 3 first-round picks and you still get a quality quarterback that may have to sit a year and 2 if you're able to get him, to me that makes a bunch of sense. That's something that I would consider if I'm Cincinnati.
All right, whether you're Cincinnati or Miami, the draft coming up in just 9 days now. They got a little bit of time left to figure out what they want to do. Speaking of LeBron James, that we just compared Joe Burrow to, yesterday, Nick broke down all 239 of LeBron James' playoff games, basically from memory, building up to a list of LeBron's top 10 postseason performances. Today, we have number 9. Nick, what do you got?
Number 9, and now when people see it, I think they're going to say this should be higher. But then you'll see over the next 2 weeks the top 8. Number 9 was LeBron's first truly iconic moment, all-time moment in the NBA. It's the 48 special against the Detroit Pistons. This is the game where LeBron James, on a team with Sasha Pavlovich, Drew Gooden, Zydrunas Ilgauskas, and Larry Hughes as the 4 other starters, took on a Pistons team that was in the midst of going to 6 straight conference finals and ended their stranglehold on the conference. LeBron did it by scoring 25 straight points, including 29 of 30 in the fourth quarter and the overtimes of that game. He had a dunk to send the game to overtime. He had a layup with less than 2 seconds left to win the game in double overtime. That game was 4,702 days ago. From that moment until right now, LeBron James has been the best basketball player alive. That, for almost any other player in the history of the league, would have been their single greatest playoff moment, career moment ever. For LeBron, it's number 9. Jenna, it is LeBron James's 9th best playoff game, the 48 special against the Detroit Pistons.